Ah, okay, cool. So yes, tech choices and assumptions. Kelly?
Yeah, so I'm Kelly Moore and I'm a software engineer at Kainos.
And I'm Rory Hanratty, and I'm previously a developer who failed upwards to be a technical architect, and somehow has failed sideways into being deputy CTO for the digital business unit in Kainos. I also spent quite a bit of time as a product manager in government digital services in the cabinet office as well. And today, what we're going to talk about is actually something that's kind of not very technical at all, talking, and why that actually matters when you're trying to build something, and why the most important thing that you can do when you're building something is to actually talk to each other. That's how you're going to make sure you're building the thing right. So nowadays we've got tons of tools that we use for tracking information. We've got palaces to like glorious user stories like Jira, where you can dump all the information in the world and everybody's going to understand that kind of stuff, down to digital post-it notes like Trello. We've got behavior-driven development type specs that can tell you how your system works. We have got automated testing itself, automatically generated API documentation. There's all this electronic stuff that exists, but it's all totally useless if you do not talk to each other. Because at the end of the day, actually kind of looking around, I don't see any cyborgs in here. Maybe that person, yeah, maybe. But we work with people, right? So it's really, really important that you actually talk at all stages of the development process. So what we're going to do is we're going to talk about some of the things that you make assumptions about, the things that you make decisions on, and some of the stuff that you just plain forget to do when you're stuck in the thick of building some products or software or services. So questions like, why are we here? Like, what's the point of what it is that you're building? And then to the lower level stuff like, what style of brackets do we use? Like Egyptian brackets? People get that? Like the whole walk like Egyptian? Okay, right, fine. And this stuff matters. It actually makes a difference to how you're going to deliver stuff. So hopefully we're going to illustrate it with a bunch of anti-patterns, I guess. So today, Matthew, I'm going to be the product manager, our technical architect.
Yeah, and I'm taking on the role of the developer. So let's start from the top with a high-level example. So as I said, I'm the developer and I'm working on this story, and it has a list of some pretty boring tasks. I don't really know what the story's for, and I'm not really sure where to start. I just don't feel motivated to get this done.
So yeah, me as product owner, I've totally made a mess of this. I clearly have not illustrated what the value is of what we're doing to the people that are actually going to be delivering and building this thing. So, I mean, essentially, like in this example, we're going to build this amazing app that's going to improve people's lives. 14.7% of the planet are going to be healthier by the time we're finished with this one. And this is cool. Like, people can get behind these kind of ideas. This is an important thing that we're doing. It's much more important than, putting a new tab on page 4 of the system that we're building earlier on. I need to express that value to people. They need to understand why we're doing this stuff, because it motivates people an awful lot more. Once I have a vision in place that describes what it is that we're aiming for, I can narrow that down slightly to give people specific context about what it is that we're building right now. What is the thing that we're trying to achieve in the shorter term? And again, this gives people a sense of purpose. It is an achievable goal. We set these things for ourselves when we're trying to develop ourselves as individuals in our jobs and stuff like that. The same thing actually has to happen when you're building a product. If you're not having little wins along the way, it just becomes very, very difficult. So I can narrow the scope, say what we're going to do and say what we're not going to do. And eventually, I get down to the point where I've got a user story that's actually based on value.
Yeah, and this is much better for me. Now I can see why I'm actually building this feature, what it means for the end user and our overall product. I can then start asking more relevant questions so that I can complete this. And now I feel ready to take on the task.
All right, cool. So, I mean, it should be quite clear why you should fix this kind of stuff. Having a sense of purpose matters. We don't work in Victorian factories anymore where we're producing widgets, and you certainly shouldn't be velocitying up points. That is definitely the wrong way to do these things. You should be focusing on delivering value. When people know what the purpose is and know what the value is, they invest more in what it is that you're building. Having a sense of purpose means that you will inherently increase the quality of what it is that you're delivering. People believe in it more, they put more effort into it, and they actually feel like they're part of something, which is really, really important in terms of building a thing right. All right, another example. This is one of my favorites. So I'm the architect. I've picked a bunch of things. My team are going to deal with this, right? I've been reading some Gartner reports. I've been following some stuff on Twitter. AWS, Lambda, serverless, future. Telling you. So I've written a white paper. I've distributed it to the executive board. That non-technical bunch of people signed off on it, so I'm totally sweet on that front. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to just ditch it across to the team, and they can deal with my decision.
Okay, so as a junior developer, I'm thinking, what is he talking about? I don't even know what AWS Lambda is. I didn't learn about it in uni, so I must go off and Google it. Or if I did know what it was, or just after I Googled it, I'll start to think, is this the right choice for our project? What does it even mean? I just don't know. He must have looked into other alternatives, but he didn't tell me why he chose this one. So I'll have to go off and do some research myself. He's a bit of a clown.
That's probably a fair observation. I guess I totally made a mess of this one. I didn't actually talk to the people that were going to have to deal with the consequences of my decision, and that's wrong. I should have checked first if we actually had the skills in place to implement something using this, and if the team actually even understand this. If I had done that first, maybe I could have prepared them for the impact of the decision that I was going to make, and they could better deal with the choices that I make.
Yeah, and again, this would be much better for me. Now I know why he made this decision and what it means for our overall project. Then I can start thinking about the choice in more depth. But I shouldn't be just satisfied just yet. I need to ask him questions and raise any concerns that I have.
Yeah, exactly. And one of the things to bear in mind with this stuff as well is with conversations, it's never wrong to be wrong about this stuff. Kelly might come up with some questions that are like totally irrelevant, but that's fine. It helps me understand the depth of experience and knowledge that we have within our teams, and that's really, really important. I'm always wrong. Like, that's kind of how I learn. I get things wrong, hopefully on a small scale, and then kind of improve by learning from that. And I ask a lot of questions, and that's how people develop and grow, right? So why should you fix this? If you're a senior technologist or somebody important in a team who's making decisions that are going to infect other people, include them in your decisions. Because if you don't, actually, to be honest, that's kind of irresponsible. And you've no idea what the consequences are for those kind of high-level decisions. You need to do this. Because if you don't, what people are going to do, Kelly's going to go off and spend time researching stuff. You're building this thing wrong. The wrong people are doing the wrong types of work. So you've got to fix this stuff. So we're going to press on with my example where I've picked AWS Lambda. Let's build it. Let's go. Time to do this. So what I've done, a little bit more responsible this time round. Spent a bit of time doing a proof of concept. I installed some sort of Node.js thing in my application, pushed it up to AWS. Worked super easy. It was mad simple to do. So I think I've probably broken the back of this problem. I told the team about my proof of concept. I emailed them a zip file with the code in it, because that's what I do as an architect. Team, why is it taking so long to do this?
Okay, so I've tried to implement this, and it 100% does not work. I'm just lost, basically. I've been working on it for 2 weeks. I've been trying to come up with a workaround, and he's really busy, so I don't want to disturb him. While the proof of concept worked, and while it seemed like a really good idea when he explained it, he just forgot some fundamental things that make it really hard for us to implement it with our project.
So on this one, again, I've made a mistake. I've fallen into the trap of believing that by fixing what I thought was 80% of the problem, I've actually only dealt with 20% of it. And I'm lacking valuable context that the team have around how the system actually works. So I should have probably talked to you a little bit more about this stuff, I guess.
Yeah, well, that would have been helpful. So why should you fix this? Just because the decision's made by someone higher in the team doesn't always necessarily mean it's the right one. When the team gets handed something and they say the proof of concept works, when it comes to the implementation, you're always going to find problems. But the important thing is the developer needs to highlight these problems to someone like the architect so they're aware and they can start coming up with new solutions. But at the same time, the architect needs to be around for the developers to give proper feedback. Otherwise, you're wasting time building the thing wrong, where you could be working on new solutions to build the thing right. So let's go with a lower level example. So again, I'm the developer and I'm working on this story. It involves finding a way to quickly deserialize some XML. So I went off to Google and I found this really good library. It does everything for me. I've completed the story in half the estimated time and my team are going to be so impressed. So I add the library, push the code, job's done.
So we just had an external pen test and it turns out somebody used an insanely insecure XML library. We probably should have checked this first, I guess.
Yeah, I think that might have been me. So you remember that story I got finished really, really quickly? Well, I didn't really think of checking if the library was secure or not. Got loads of upvotes in Stack Overflow, and the comments were really, really positive, so I just trusted it and went with it. I was so focused on getting that story finished and getting the thing working. Just didn't think, sorry.
I guess it's okay. I mean, this time nobody broke into our database and stole all our Pokemon information, so we're probably good on this front. But you know what, next time, this is where me being old and cynical and having had some experience of this is going to kick in. I probably could have had a discussion with you about this beforehand and steered you towards checking some of that stuff out.
Yeah, and I probably could have raised the questions earlier.
So why should you fix this? I mean, that's a pretty extreme example. But the fundamental part of what we're trying to get at here is that if you're not having these sort of conversations as you're building things along, you need to ask some questions about who are you learning from, because if it's not your team, then it seems like maybe it's the internet, and this might be controversial, but the internet can be wrong sometimes, only sometimes. And you need to make sure that you're having these conversations to transfer knowledge between people on your team. And it's often more than just the functionality that you're trying to implement. Yes, we were trying to deserialize some XML, but there are other things that you need to think about, like the security of what it is that you're doing and the performance of what it is that you're going to do, all that kind of good stuff, right?
Yeah, and it's easy as a developer to just put your blinkers on and deliver the story. But it's not enough. As Rory said, you need to think about the non-functionals as well. It's all well and good when you have a feature that works and does what it's supposed to do, but not if it affects another part of the application. In this case, a simple conversation could have solved all this. If I, as the developer, had shown Rory this library, then nothing would have made it into the project in the first place. So let's go with a more abstract example, low level. So again, I'm working on a story. I've been working on it for about a week now. And after some challenges, I've finally completed everything it says on the description. So I'm done.
This is totally not what I wanted.
But the description said green fast car.
Yeah, it said green fast car, but I was kind of hoping for something like slightly more awesome, I guess.
Right.
I suppose on this one, actually, the point here is we both kind of made a mess of this one. I should have had a bit more of an upfront conversation about what I was looking for when I said green fast car, and maybe you should have asked me a few more questions.
Yeah, well, that would have been useful, but it's easy to say, not so easy to do because you're not around that much.
Again, a fair point. I do tend to go to lots of product management-y meeting things and don't spend much time with the team. That is bad. We need to fix that. So what we'll do in future, let's do kickoffs. Let's make sure that everybody who's involved in delivering the value that we've agreed on up front here is around to have the conversations about what it is that we're going to do. And rather than me turning up at the end and discovering that we got this instead of this, maybe I can check in as we're going along and see that things are going in the right way. That way we can make sure that we're building the thing right.
Yep, great.
Cool, done. All right. Why should you fix this? I think that's pretty obvious, to be honest. You need to make sure that you're having conversations about what value you're delivering on a regular basis to make sure people are being steered in the right way. If you're not doing that and you're the person responsible for making decisions about how a product is going to be built, you're in a bad place. You don't know what you're doing, basically. You have no idea what's going to turn up either at the end of a sprint or at the end of a story. So it's very, very important that these discussions happen and that you are around to kind of make sure that people like Kelly are building things in the right direction. It's your responsibility. Don't be absent, essentially.
Okay, so one last example. So again, I picked up yet another story, and I'm not quite sure how to implement it, so I go off to Google. So I'm making great progress on this story. I have implemented a new authentication mechanism from scratch, and I found all these cool libraries and do all this cool stuff. Yeah?
You know that we kind of built like almost all of this on one of the other microservices that we delivered last week. So like the person just there with the really cool pink hair, kind of your team lead, she knows about all this stuff.
Well, nobody told me.
Did you ask?
No.
Okay, what we do next time?
Well, I suppose I shouldn't just jump straight into the story. I should ask about and see if anyone's done anything similar. So when you've just picked up a story, it's really important to take time to plan. Go and see where code's reusable or where you need to build something from scratch. Then when you think you know how you're going to implement it, take it to another developer in the team or even your architect. Then they can see the value in what you're doing, i.e. they can see why it's taken so long, or they can even suggest an easier way of doing it. So your first task should be to go plan. Don't open your laptop. Close it. Go to a whiteboard. See all these big things, fancy things that companies have. Use them. You need to understand what you're doing first. Second, now you can go look at the code. See where what you're building fits in with everything else. And in this case, you might even find that something's been done before and you can reuse it. And your last step is to ask questions. Get opinions from others in your team. A lot can be learned from a 2-minute conversation, and someone will know someone that knows something.
That's pretty hard to say, good job. So I guess the point here is like talk, essentially. Too long didn't read. Give you back 15 minutes of your life if you could time travel. Talk to each other a bit more. Like we said at the outset, there's all of these digital tools that you can use for sharing information and knowledge and all the rest of it. But mostly that's where information and communication goes when it's asleep. It's not active, right? You need to be having these conversations around this stuff. That is one of the most important things that you can get right when you're building software, to make sure you are building the thing right. As a product manager, I can't spend all of my time with my head in the clouds facing the future, like inventing the new stuff that's going to improve the world and make all the monies and do whatever it is it's going to do. And as a technical architect, I definitely cannot spend my time writing my decisions onto parchment in my ivory tower and ditching it at the team.
And as a developer, I shouldn't spend 100% of my time with my head buried in an IDE writing lines and lines of code. If you do, maybe you need to stop, gather some people around a whiteboard and just talk. Then you can be sure that you're building the thing right. Thank you.